Gary?
Right, good morning, everybody, and another warm welcome to this council meeting. So welcome to councillors and staff, to members of the public and media who may be watching the live stream. So first of all, do we have any apologies? We have an apology from Councillor Percival, who's here at the moment but may need to leave early for a funeral. Are there any others? Okay, someone would like to move or accept that apology? Give me a Timothy. Thank you. Councillor Kingan. Thank you. Those in favour say aye. And against, that's carried. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, moving on. No one for public forum. Confirmation of previous meeting minutes, item 4.1 on page 6. It's the meeting from the 9th of August. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you. I'm happy to move that they be adopted, but there's a correction on page 7 and I raise it because I genuinely don't know what the word should be. Under 3 public forum, second line, with whom she had been working for the past 2 gets to get Waitaki Neighbourhood Watch up and running. And it's either years or months. I suspect it's months, but decades. I don't think it's decades, Councillor Thompson, but
So, sorry, page
7,
Yep.
under item 3, public forum,
Yep.
second line,
Oh, okay.
6th word in.
For you, Mr. Chair, I'm suggesting, if I recall correctly, that it should be years, so I will correct that.
Yeah, so I think that would be in her previous role. So thank you. So you're moving
Yes.
that they be adopted with that
Correct.
change. Seconded. Councillor Halalali, thank you. Those in favour say aye. And against, it's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5.1, the Chief Executive's report, and Mr. Palmley. And over to you.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm not going to talk through all this report, but this is the last quarterly report for the current set of KPIs, updating on progress with those. A couple of things I'll just highlight within there are really within the other areas of work we've been taking forward, which are taking up quite a lot of resource at the moment. So in particular, the work around Three Waters reform, where we now have increasing workload from the National Transition Unit and their demands that they're placing on all councils in order to set up the new water entities as the Waters Bill passes through Parliament. I'm pleased to report that we're working in collaboration with Otago and Southland councils in this work to share resources and effort and intelligence, which is sort of spreading the load really amongst the councils, and we're looking, to work with our Canterbury neighbours as well to see if we can share resources within that area as well, so that it's joint effort rather than all councils duplicating the effort of each other. The other area I'd highlight, which was picked up in the Mayor's reports last time, was the severe weather events that we faced within the district. I think it's fair to say that these have had a big impact on our communities, and they had a big impact on the organisation in terms of dealing with those the response to that. We're doing an appraisal of that response as well to see what lessons we can learn. But the work to deal with those severe weather events still continues, still taking up a lot of resource in terms of dealing with the backlog of repairs and maintenance that now need to take place to deal with the impacts. We have made progress on some of the key issues we're facing, so I'm pleased to report that particularly around Otamatata, where we had some issues with drainage, we've made some good progress there in fixing some of the infrastructure within that area. But some of the issues we face as we look forward to the prospect of more severe weather events in the future, we're going to have to do more work around drainage and find the resource to be able to deal with that to minimise the impact on our communities going forward. Happy to answer any questions on the KPIs.
Okay. Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thanks, Alex, for your report, and I'll kick off for the first question. You talked about three waters, and I noted in your report that Waitaki is working with the Otago and Southland councils to share resources, etc. Is there any, and a submission being made as well, is there any thought amongst Otago Southland to try and push for an Otago Southland entity? Should government decide to maybe look at some other option apart from their option they are dead set pursuing so far?
So I know some of the Otago councils have, in their representations on the Waters Bill, pushed for consideration of other options. So some councils are doing that. It's not something that we're particularly doing, and our submission, highlighted that we're opposed to the current proposed solutions to water reform, but we haven't actually ourselves pushed for a separate entity. But it's something that other councils are open to. But at this stage, I don't see any signs from the government that they are willing to shift from their current four entity solution.
Thank you, Alex. I think your response is what I thought, but I think there's no harm in having plan B ready should chink appear in their armour or in their plans.
If I could just speak to that, I think the conversations we're having with neighbours is part of that, and the work that, as Mr. Palmley said about working closely with Otago and Southland councils, is very much that that one of those alternatives is going on a more regional basis rather than the four entities. So, yeah, I think that's it's helping, and cooperating and with neighbours is. Potentially, even if it just becomes a shared service, if that was the model, sharing the service with a few of our immediate neighbours, we are reasonably well set up for that. It won't achieve all the goals that the government's got in mind, but it might just help us in our situation. Any other questions, Councillor Hopkins?
You're just picking up on the matter of the submission to the select committee. I presume we are intending to present in person, and I'm wondering who's going to do that.
Yes, we are and did.
Oh,
I went for a 10-minute meeting in Dunedin last week, and really pushed they obviously took the submission as read, covered off a few of the main points, and took the opportunity really to say that how they're doing things is not helping councils, because essentially gutting councils of staff, not just the ones who deal only in water, but some of our other departments such as GIS, IT, finance and so on. If someone's got a bit of their job dealing with water, then they're being offered jobs in the new entity, and that's going to take away someone who may have 3/4 of their job working across the rest of council. And that's, it's just not good enough, and it's going to be harmful to councils, and it's going to be inflationary, as it's going to put pressure on wages and try and keep people, and having to pay them more than what they are now. So it's challenging. So that was one of the things anyway that I touched on.
thank you, and well done.
Deputy Mayor Tamdale.
Just on the district plan, I'm just wondering if at some stage we can get a bit of an outline as to where to from here, because I think we've always sort of done our discussions right up to when it goes out to the first tranche of discussion with the public, I guess, and now it's how does that fit into the timetable, what implication, or what role do councillors have moving forward, and what sort of timeframes we're working towards.
Yeah, so I think that's covered in the next item around the revised KPIs, where we set out a proposed new timetable for the district plan, which reflects that we spent a lot more time engaging, particularly on the rural aspects of that. So if we can pick that up in the next item, good.
Actually, I hadn't intended to mention that, but given that the Deputy Mayor's raised the matter, I do think a key issue for elected members is who hears the submissions on the draft. Now, if it's a resource consent hearing, it has to be certified commissioners. in the case of a district plan hearing, it doesn't have to be. It can be councillors. And I believe we should have councillor representation in this early stage, maybe second phase with the proposed plan and the really complex RMA processes, perhaps commissioners. But in this first iteration of the plan, I think that the hearing panel should have councillors on it. I really do. Now, whether that's a decision made now or immediately after the election, that's perhaps a matter for you and Alex to discuss. But I do think that I would like councillors to think about that.
Yeah, it's yeah, I think as part of the KPI setting and understanding what the timeline is, then we'll have a better idea of, you know, when are these, you know, that part, when is that part of the process happening, and who's available to do that. And yeah, we've I think it's important to have that local voice. I mean, that's one of the key things around free water reform and resource management reform, is making sure that we continue to have a local voice in those processes. And so that's needs to be taken into consideration as well. Councillor Wolstein.
Thanks, Mayor Kircher. Just one other point, and it's a second point that Alex raised in his preamble at the start regarding the severe weather events. Councillor King and I are buddy councillors for Ahuriri at the present time, and they've had about 3 severe weather events up there. And we've received a number of emails and other texts and things from people up in the area. And Alex, your comment here, Alex, of the events highlighted some issues and political potential learnings, as well as a mismatch between community expectations and our requirements and response approach. And that was a very big thing that was pushed home to me. The expectation people had up there that after the snow, that their streets and the footpaths would all be cleared of snow in a very short time, etc. So I think road manager Mike Harrison has been up there and met with the people up there. But I think your comment there regarding a mismatch between the community expectations and what council can do is very, very correct, and it's something that perhaps needs to be, you know, discussed with the community, so that in future with events there is they realise what council are able to provide. So just a comment based on feedback I had.
Yeah, yeah, we've been party to quite a few discussions up there, and I think there is a mismatch. And I think we need to look at whether, you know, we have got the ability to match some of those expectations, but also I suspect we won't be able to match all of the expectations. And then I think we need to, you know, clearly communicate and get an understanding amongst the community and the other agencies as to what we can and will be doing in those sort of events. And what will be the responsibility of others, which, you know, might be a hard message sometimes, but, you know, we need to be clear on that.
Yeah, I think there's expectation more clear roads and footpaths and so forth, and clearing footpaths is not often done, you know, in many places around the world. You know, roads, yes, and we need to be I think, you know, make sure that's happening where it can and where it should be happening. But yeah, it's communicating well with the community about actually, you know, we don't have the people and equipment to clear footpaths because it's, you know, we've got blades and so on. Well, the contractors have blades that they can put on trucks to clear the roads, but yeah, so it's getting those expectations correct. It's also working with Waka Kotahi, you know, because I understand they were clearing the highways, so they get to the town boundary and they lift the blades and they didn't clear in the highways that go through the town. So we just need to, there's something I want to make sure we check on what did happen in those situations. Just on the flood events and so on, this week we've got Canterbury Mayoral Forum and Alex and I will be there. I've already talked with Peter Scott, Deputy Chair of ECAN, about some of the issues around the streams and so on, and particularly in that Otamatara Marama area, and the need to get on and do some get some work done. The government's got a significant fund that can be applied to for helping to control some of the rivers and allow for some of these big events. And there's councils around the country are getting on and doing those things. We need to make sure that we're doing that. I think it needs to be done through regional council, but we certainly need their expertise in modelling what's going to be happening, what has happened, and what's going to be happening. What is the solution to that? Where do you need to put berms and so on beside streams to help control where they go? So there's a bit of work to be done there, but there's some conversations we need to have this week. So we'll see how that all goes. So any other questions, Mr. Palmley? No. Okay. I'll move we receive the information. Councillor Wolfstein, you second that. Any further discussion? Can I put it, those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. Okay, moving on to item 6.1, which is adoption of the CEO's KPIs, key performance indicators. So just as by way of introduction, I think it's important to note that this is not intended to be a complete list of everything we want the CE to do. There's a lot of business as usual that happens along the way, and we expect that to be done professionally and to a good level. But the KPIs are really about setting what are the priorities amongst all of the major things that we're doing, and there are very, very many major things we're involved in at the moment, of course, and having KPIs which reflect what are the priorities, and what do we expect from each of those is really important. I want to thank Alex for his work in pulling this together, and it's been difficult for us to have enough time together to do the work on it that we need to, but working with Alex, I think we've got something which does reflect what we want to see, but you can give your opinion on that very shortly. I'll hand over to you, Alex, just to take it from here.
Yeah, by way of brief introduction, what you've got before you is a draft set of KPIs, many of which are a continuation of KPIs from the previous year as the various strategic initiatives we're working on continue to develop. The approach adopted is to set out the overall outcome that you want to achieve, which is recognizing that some of these things will span a number of years, and keeping an eye on where we're trying to get to overall is important. A link to your strategic framework, some measures of success, and some proposed key milestones. So the key milestones setting out the envisaged timetable that will take them forward. I've set them out in a slightly different format. I think I got some feedback that initially, whilst the last set of KPIs presented quite well, as we progressed, it got more and more confusing. So we set them out slightly differently to last time. So welcome your feedback on whether that adds a bit more clarity. In terms of the actual KPIs themselves, I'm not going to run through every single one, just highlights where there are some changes. So there's a new KPI in there around developing our partnership with iwi. This isn't new work, but we have been working on this, and our partnership continues to develop, and the feedback from Te Runanga is very positive in terms of our partnership and how that's developing. But it's formally recognising that in there as a strategic piece of work that we need to undertake over the coming year. Then other changes. So within the strategic priorities, we've removed the one around procurement. That doesn't mean it's not important anymore, but we've made significant progress on that, and there are reports today on that progress. And within there, we now have community health and wellbeing strategy, culture and art strategy, and environment strategy. For those, we're still working on the timetable for those, and I think what we need to do is bring initiation documents that to agree those timetables with you. And then the other new one in there is around transformation, which is also on the agenda for today. We agreed back in early June, to initiate a transformation program. So it's setting that out as a key priority for myself now and the team to take forward over the coming year. I'll just open up to questions.
Okay. I see we've renamed it Culture and Arts. Always thought art was part of culture, but anyway, I'm not going to go into ditch on that one. I think when you separate them out, it does make it a bit weird. But anyway, that's all right. Councillor Tavendale.
But you're not commenting, eh?
No, not at all.
Only thing I just wanted to I guess make a point of, I've seen some comments online around why would council be setting the KPIs now, and it should be for a new council, that kind of thing. So I think it's just making sure people understand the process in behind, which is the KPIs fall out of what councillors decide are our strategic priorities, and that doesn't happen overnight. So you can't have a new council come in October and expect in day one they're going to be able to set the CEO's KPIs. So this very much tides us over for the next 6 months, and it gives the new council the ability to get on and to learn the ropes around council, to then work out how they work together and what their own strategic priorities are, and then that can feed into the next lot of KPIs. But I just thought it was quite important that we actually clarify that.
Yeah, I did respond eventually to that comment on social media, because it's people expect that we can't do these things, and actually we need to do it. Staff need that direction, and the CE needs the KPIs to actually work to, and rather than leave it essentially 6 months, like you say. So yeah, thanks for clarifying that one. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, just a couple of comments. I think Mel's right, and I agree that it has to be done now. It should be, and that it is, if you like, interim given the time frame. But I'm just looking at on page 27. There's a reference to this is KPI 1 Future for Local Government Review, and the first measure for success, stronger Waitaki model is recognised nationally as demonstrating the potential future of local government. The difficulty I have with this is Alex is being held responsible for how other people react, and I'm not entirely sure that's fair. Personally, I'd like to see it disappear altogether or be modified, because I mean, to use a kind of a current analogy, that's a bit like saying Garev Sharma is responsible for the decision of the Labour Party caucus. In other words, I don't see how we can make our CE responsible for the way other people deal with us. He can certainly influence it, and we can have a KPI that says that the chief executive works to achieve recognition, but saying that we are recognised causes problem. Well, there's problems for me. On the next page, KPI 3, partnership with iwi, I think there's partnerships with the community, partnerships with we have a partnership with the chief executive. And if we're going to say that the council is fulfilling utility commitments, we should say what they are, in my view, which may be problematic, but I think we should make an effort. And on the next one, if you look at bullet points 3 and 4, I genuinely and sincerely think they could be combined without in any way diluting them. If, for instance, bullet point 3 read, iwi are partners to council in co-designing and delivering strategies and ambitions, that would absolutely cover everything that's said in 4, which is iwi and council partner on delivering ambitions. So I would just suggest that those two become one, with the wording changed as I've just proposed.
Okay, just on the first one, these are reasonable. I mean, it's not that this is stuff that Alex does by himself. I mean, we have an important role to play in, I'm mentioning Stronger Waitaki regularly with conversations with the Future for Local Government panel, with ministers, with various, key people in decision making places. Deputy Mayor in a presentation at Local Government Conference talked about Stronger Waitaki. It's up for all of us to do that, and these are not. Here is the KPI, Mr. Palmley. You need to deliver this, and that they are things that actually, if we do it well, and he's got an important part to play in that, then this will be this measure of success. It's not that, oh, we didn't make it, so we're going to punish you for that. It's understanding we've all got the role. That is a measure of success for all of us, and if we've done that right, then that's all.
Look, I accept that.
Gone well. I'm just going to go to the Deputy Mayor now.
A couple of things. First of all, just on that point around Stronger Waitaki, I think it is already recognised nationally, and I think that's been done with a whole lot of recognition that Helen Alvarez, our person, has had. I think there's been recognition through local government in so many areas. I would prefer to see it continues to be recognised, because I don't think this is a new thing, and it's just something we need to keep that band high. So I'll go back at you a wee bit, Councillor Hopkins. And just talking about your points 3 and 4 around the co-designing your strategies and ambitions and then delivering ambitions, they can be different. I don't think every strategy we need to be both delivering on. At times we'll go away and do our own things, and that's what part of this is all about. So I think they need to sit separately, and there'll be at times they are the same thing, and there'll be times that they're not. So for myself, I think it's still, it makes no difference to keep them separate and keep them clear. I don't think it adds anything grouping them together for the sake of it.
Councillor Halalali.
Yes, just a quick comment from me. It has to stay. Stronger Waitaki needs to stay as a measure of success, because part of the CEO's role is to help maximise the model so we can bring visibility to opportunities for our community in order to achieve some of the outcomes that we have set out. There's no buts about it. It's already performed highly. It's already provided some really good professional development opportunities for our social service agencies, just to name a few. So I don't want anything to change in that particular KPI. Just in response to the partnership with iwi, there's a special relationship that council has with iwi, and it's separate to relationships with other others in the community, and that needs to be highlighted specifically in the KPIs. I don't understand why we keep bringing this kind of thing up. So I'm supportive of both of those to stay the same.
Well, look, all I was saying was that having stronger Waitaki, I'm not saying it should be taken out. I'm simply saying that having the stronger Waitaki model recognised nationally is something that other people do, not the chief executive. If the word was stronger Waitaki model is promoted nationally, then that's entirely within Alex's control, responsibilities, and we can measure him on that. But we can't measure the way other people react to what we are promoting and what we're offering. So I'm not saying take it out. I'm simply saying that recognition of others can't be a responsibility of the chief executive. But anyway, obviously it's not going to happen. So
Well, if you go down that pathway, there's many of these measures of success you would treat the same way. Just because actually it's not only up to the CE about that some of these things happening. A big part of the CE's role is about helping us strategically and to get on and lobby for things, to do background work on things with the hope of influencing and gaining success along the way. And many of them aren't necessarily his decisions, but they are things that will be measures of success. And like I say, we've all got a role to play in that. And sometimes it's, the future for local government overall. We're saying to have fully contributed. That's not just the CE; it's making sure that he's supporting us contributing to that we are a big part of making sure that those things are happening. So it's just setting that out, and this not being a here's your to-do list. This is the things we want you to focus on, and the outcomes that if we all do this well, that'll be the successful result. So any other questions, Councillor Williams?
Mine's more just a comment. The Three Waters reform, I know this is written in a really general way, but I just want us, we've had a few discussions lately, and we realise that we're going in a very accelerated fashion towards doing everything we can to put ourselves in the best place later on. But I think we need to be sure that we are balancing it with the risk, the very slight risk. Hopefully it's a very slight risk that the debt won't be taken on by the new entity. So I just want us to make sure it's not really included in here at all. It's just something I want us to be quite conscious of going forward.
Yeah, and again, you're absolutely right. With Friday, Councillor Thompson and I were meeting on Three Waters, and you're talking about some of those sorts of issues. I've talked directly with DIA, trying to get as much assurance on it. There's a lot that's not being clarified under the first water services entity bill. More of that will become clearer in the second one, but there's still, we're being told, for example, that there's still not going to be an overall requirement around price harmonisation across an entity. So, there's some some major questions that, the government has based their case on, which we're not seeing following through. So I think all of those things need to be taken into consideration in this, that we are de-risking things as much as possible for our community.
Yeah, and they just haven't given us a lot of reason to have complete trust in them so far. So we just have to be very cautious going forward.
Fair comment. Do you have any further response? No, that's all good. That's fine. Okay, any other comments? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand where Councillor Hopkins is coming from, and that so many of these things we're actually dealing with outside external parties. But at the end of the day, we need to actually show where we want Waitaki to go. And if we're timid at any point, it will be to our detriment, as various things of. So I support that. The only question I have around the KPIs, and it's more a philosophical one, is if we become too prescriptive in what we're asking the CE to do we actually hamstring the ability to be flexible and respond to various situations? I don't think we do in this, but it's something that I've been, as I've been reading it, I've been thinking the more prescriptive we become, often we may be making it harder to actually achieve.
Any response to that one? That would be quite good.
Yeah, so I mean, I think to date, in terms of how we've handled these, I think they've been handled in the spirit in which they're written. That recognizing that not all of this is within our control, and a lot of this is about how we lead and how we influence. And so as things have changed, circumstances have changed. We have brought updates, and I think councillors have recognised that. I think the key bit of this to focus on really is the outcome that we're wanting from each of these KPIs. The measures of success and the milestones, whilst they're here for your agreement, are the bits where there may be changes, and particularly milestones connected with things that are not totally within our control, like Three Waters reform. We are responding to other people's agendas and timetables on that, and as long as we recognise that and you're considering them and adopting them, I think that's fine.
Okay, I'll move the recommendation that we adopt the KPIs for the year ending 30 June 2023. Considering Councillor Thompson, and just saying that, recognising that a new council may decide to change some of these things, and one would hope would work in the necessary spirit of cooperation with the CE to agree on what they are. A lot of these are big things, so it's not about we're not changing direction in any major way with adopting these ones compared to what we've been doing. It would be very difficult for a new council to have a major change in direction without losing sight of a lot of these major issues. So I think these are right. I doubt the future council would disagree with a lot of what's in there, but that's up to them, obviously, to make the decision. Councillor King.
Yeah, I certainly agree with what you've just said. I think the KPIs that we've got now are actually pretty easy to follow. They're what we're doing, and it's just a continuation of what's happened over the last 12 months. So I think they're excellent.
Any other comments? Put it. So those in favour say aye, and against. That is carried. Thank you very much. Right, moving on to 6.2 transformation program, and just my 2 cents worth. This does come down to the reasons why we one of the major reasons why we employed Mr. Palmley and had him start a year ago. The idea of having a more effective, more efficient council that delivers better the services to its to the ratepayers is really important. And I've been getting questions from people, well, what does it actually mean? And, you know, why do this now? You know, one of the things is the easy question is, do you want council to be better? And it's really hard for the ardent critics of council to say no to that one. So, you know, it helps get them on board at least that there is a need to change in some areas and to have a proper look at things. We've had lots of things come on to local government over the last 30 years since the last major reforms. There's always been incremental change to how we adapt to that, and you know we've adopted new activities, adopted new processes, and so on to do all that. But at no point have we ever actually stepped back and had an overarching look at the situation. So actually, is everything actually meshing together the way it needs to? So this is the opportunity for that, and I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, hand over to Mr. Parnley, who's going to be leading this process.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so back on the 7th of June, you agreed to initiate a transformation program, and we said we'd be coming back to you in key stages in the development of that program. So this is the next key stage. There'll be other stages in this as well. And what you have before you is a case for change, and also sets out what we want to achieve in high level terms from the change that's before us. And when we're talking about change, obviously the council has changed over the years and has made improvements, but this is a much more fundamental change in the way the council operates. It's an overhaul of what we do so that we can make sure that we are delivering the best for our district, for our residents, and for our customers. And it's not saying that the council is operating in a bad way at the moment. It's probably very similar to most councils that I've come across in New Zealand, but there are opportunities now to operate in a different way that weren't there only a few years ago. And the world we operate in as an organisation has changed as well. And so we need to recognise that that things have changed for us and for our communities, and there are opportunities for us to do things differently. We face new challenges as a council and as a district, and we face new opportunities to deliver better outcomes and services as well along the way. We're an ambitious council. I think sometimes that can be a challenge. Our ambitions are great for what we want to achieve for our customers and for our district. And we've also, on top of that, got growing demands and growing costs, and our communities are facing growing costs as well. And so if we want to meet our ambitions and our very ambitious programme, we need to look at the way we work so that we can do that in the most efficient and effective way. And that means significant change. And change is being brought upon us as well. So the reforms we face in terms of Three Waters, RMA and the Future for Local Government review will mean that councils will look different, operate differently, have different sets of services in the future. And this is an opportunity for us to shape that, to be on the front foot dealing with that change rather than on the back foot, just responding to the change and following the direction of others. It's an opportunity to lead within the local government sector. And in doing this, we must recognise that we exist as an organisation to benefit the district and its residents and to improve quality of life and well-being. And this will be the focus of our transformation programme. How do we make sure we design a council that is set up to do that in the best way possible with the resources we've got? And that's what the transformation programme sets out to deliver. So it will bring a renewed focus on our role as a community organisation and a community leader. But in doing that, we recognise that change will continue to happen. So we'll need to be a much more flexible organisation, much more agile in the future. So rather than evolving, building into our DNA as an organisation, the ability to respond to the changes out there within our communities and within the local government sector. This document also sets out that we aim to deliver very modern customer-focused services that meet our residents and our business needs. And in doing that, we want to work more collaboratively with the community and partner organisations in how we deliver for Waitaki. We do that well in some areas at the moment, and it's about how do we do that across all of our service areas and responsibilities. We also aim to be a leading employer. We recognise that recruitment is increasingly competitive out there, and if we really want to deliver the best for our residents and have really efficient and effective services, we need to be able to retain and attract the best staff and be able to invest in them so that their skills are up to date, so that we can deliver those really excellent services. But also mean a change to our systems and ways of working, and to some extent our culture as well, so that we can ensure that we're efficient and effective as a council. And importantly, we work as one team. And I think we've had discussions before. As an organisation, we work as many teams. We're seen as one organisation, but we work as many teams. And sometimes that's okay, but on most occasions now that's not, and we can work in a different way, in a better way, for our residents and our customers. So this case for change sets out the need for change and sets out those aspirations. It doesn't provide all the answers to what that change looks like yet. That work is to come, and we'll keep coming back to council, bringing that work to you as it progresses. But it's before you today to agree the mandate for change and to agree what we're aiming to achieve from the transformation programme. Hand over to, I think, Lisa, who may want to add to this. And then before we open up to questions and comments.
Yeah, just note we do have Richard Mayer and Lisa Bailey here, and I don't know whether you've all noticed the change in their titles, but Richard's now the Transformation Program Manager and Lisa's the People and Transformation Group Manager. So that's the significance that this transformation program is taking within the organisation. So Lisa, hand over to you. You're not allowed to speak to them, Councillor Hopkins. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, it is a significant project for us and something we are resourcing appropriately. Today, as Alex said, is about approving the mandate for change. It's about endorsing the proposed approach, aspirations and community benefits that are in the paper and the slide deck in front of you. So phase one was really about establishing a very clear current state and understanding of the situation that we're operating in and the challenges that we face. We know as an organisation we can work more smart, more effectively and more efficiently. Our staff want to do that. We know we can deliver what our community needs better. Our team want to do that, and our community frankly need us too. Particularly if we want to respond well to the changing environment, and some of those factors that Alex already outlined are also highlighted as key drivers in all the conversations that we've been having with you to date and in this document. I'll be brief. The proposed approach that we have is based on very sound frameworks. It's based on robust processes, and it will be delivered in a very agile manner, again, as Alex has touched on. Again, our proposed approach, it is a smart one. It aims to adopt a mix of partnering with our community and developing our capability and capacity in-house where we need to, but not trying to do it all alone. Effectively, that's the key to this document. You've got a slide deck in front of you which summarises the why and the how. And Alex, as Alex said, we'll be coming back to you at different milestones and stage gates to talk further steps of the process. So effectively now we'll just throw it out to you for questions and the team will answer them as we can.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bailey. Right. Questions at this stage? Councillor Williams.
Just expanding on what Alex said. So future councils are going to look different and they're going to work differently. They're probably going to be quite unrecognisable to how we sort of see them today. And we want to be like a leader for change. But I think in some of the areas that we're going to be changing, we need to make sure that we're not bearing the brunt of the cost of being the leader for change. For example, I always keep going back to technology and making sure that we do work with other councils in the country to make sure that that sort of cost should be almost shared, because at the end of the day, we should almost start working towards being on a more shared system in that particular area. So I just want to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel as we keep going down the path of the technology, which is one of the most expensive areas that we're going to be transforming.
Yeah, so in doing this, we've set out that we want to develop a collaborative approach to how we transform, so involving others. That includes our fellow councils as well. That might be neighbouring councils, it might be like-minded councils, and so Whilst we haven't got anything agreed in that area, there is work going on to actually develop those partnership working arrangements. You can see within the sort of Three Waters space that we're collaborating at the moment, and I'm hoping that's a platform to build on with Otago and Southland councils in terms of taking forward change that we all face in many different areas outside of Three Waters. So we're not there yet, but that's very much part of our approach. We want to collaborate with others in how we change.
One of the things that's been identified as part of the work of the Future for Local Government panel has been the fact that we're not all on the same IT platforms, and the challenge that has is we all end up needing bespoke solutions to add on modules and various things with our IT. So it's something that is recognised, and there has been suggestions of central government funding to actually get everyone onto the same platform. For example, with our close neighbours to the north, I think we're on the same system as Timaru, Mackenzie and Waimate on different systems, but same as each other. It's just really difficult to work with neighbours and easily make changes and so forth across local government when you've got those things, as you point out. So it's identified and it's being worked on. There's some recognition at least of it. Councillor Wallstein and then Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. Yeah, just the comments I've had from members of the public, or questions really. There was 3 questions. One was the rationale, which I think, as you've already enunciated, Mayor Kircher, it's quite easy to answer. We want to do things better. That was easy to answer. The second thing was resources. And I'm just looking at page 35, the second paragraph under people. And that talks about secondments and as long as using internal staff, as long as the BAU, business as usual, is carried on. And then the backward requirements, the need for external consultant support therefore remains in phase 2 and phase 3. And the other question I've had really is, using external consultants, what's the budget? How much money is being spent on transformation? And I think in this paper, I don't think I saw anywhere where we actually referred to the cost or how much budget is being allocated to the program. So I could easily answer the question for the reason. The resources, well, I've covered it to a point there, but the cost, I haven't been able to answer to the public that have questioned me. So just any information on that point. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, so that'll be subject. So we said we're going to bring it forward in stages. So that'll be subject to the next paper that we've put in the recommendations there to come back to you at the September meeting with the business case setting out the investment and the return on that investment.
Could I just perhaps rephrase what I said before too? And when I've spoken to the members of the public as well, I've also called it an investment, not a cost as well. So supporting what you've just said.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing is actually making sure that the public understands, it's an investment and that there is a real payback and not just a cost. So it continues to be an important part of it, and we want to see it as that, and what is the return actually for council and for the public, and not just spending money that we're not going to get back. Mrs. Bailey, comment on that.
Thank you. I just want to add to Councillor Wallstein's issue around the resourcing, and it's something that we haven't talked about today, but has been front and centre in the conversations we've been having in this chamber, is that this is very much about doing this for ourselves. And yes, we're working with a very experienced consultant partner, but when we went out looking for somebody to work with, we were very clear that we didn't want anyone to come in and do this to us or do this for us. We wanted to use our staff, have our staff co-designing whatever system we have going forward, and working with our community. So it wasn't. So it was an opportunity to develop our capability in-house as well, and that's still very much front and centre. Resourcing, we have used staff internally to field team to work on this project, and of course with the external partner, resourcing is a challenge, and we do highlight that it is one of our risks going forward, but we're making some great progress in actually sourcing the skills we need. And one of the benefits of working with the consultant partner that we've selected is they can also be an extension to us should we need them. So at the moment, we're actually working with them very closely to resource our IS space to give us some support there at the moment.
Councillor Hopkins and then Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Thanks, Mayor Kitcher. I'd also be worthwhile pointing out at the September meeting that in terms of this investment, that a lot of it, a very significant portion of it, is money that's already been voted and gone through annual plans and therefore public consultation and scrutiny. And it does relate in large measure to the matter that you talked about, Mayor Kircher, and also Councillor Williams. I have two questions / comments. The first relates to technology. On page 35, you talk about phases 2 and 3 having been progressed and
With your iPad.
right, okay. Well, I'm sorry that you can't make a phone call with your iPad.
Right, carry on. And Councillor Percival,
This is outrageous, Mayor Kircher. It's a deliberate attempt. These are these people who are trying to make us ungovernable.
I did have my suspicions about Councillor Percival on that front.
This is a place for freedom, moral.
Anyway, if you'd like to carry on with your discussion.
The point is, as well as financial, with regards to technology, I think we need to actually confront a very fundamental thing in this transformation program. Technology is going to be the bedrock, the foundation of a lot of it. And essentially, and I'm not criticising our staff, for a variety of obvious and apparent reasons, much of what we've tried to do hasn't been delivered on time or hasn't been delivered at all. And indeed, the most critical thing we wanted to do, which was digitise everything, is a program that started back in the day and still hasn't been completed. The problems with staff and all sorts of things. I believe if we are going to commit to funding technology, which is a key part of this transformation, that not only should the phases 2 and 3 include financials, they should also include timetables. And if things aren't delivered on time to enable the transformation, we just do it another way. So my question is, would you be willing to add timetables as well as financials to that phase? And my second question, if I may, Mayor Kircher, is just on page 41. I did raise this, or I mentioned it before. I'm looking at the chart of people who are going to be interviewed and assisted and those to be informed and consulted and co-designers. And I'm looking at people who we're proposing to inform, like the LGFA, like Audit NZ, like Federated Farmers, like O'Mara Maria Field, the Youth Council, the public, and the PSA. And I don't think it's quite sufficient to say we'll inform them. I think they should be consulted as well. I think they should have an opportunity, all of those groups, for a variety of reasons, I won't go into them, should have an opportunity to input. So I just posed the question, are you willing to consider engagement, consultation, as well as information for those groups?
Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. Thank you, Jim. Councillor Hopkins. So a number of questions there. So the first one on technology, yes, technology is key. We're not going to succeed in our new ways of working without having technology to underpin that. We accept and acknowledge that. That is one of the key risks we've identified in the program in our risk management analysis so far. So we're doing a number of things already to try and get ahead of that, including some of the things to do with who we're engaging with, Maven and consultants and so on. So we accept and are working on that risk. The challenge of technology and transforming it, my view of what's been very difficult for council in the last 2 years or 3 years, let's say, is it's very hard to change systems when you've got to keep them running at the same time. There's a certain amount of what I'd call technical debt that it's if you think of it like a mortgage, it would be very hard to find the money and time and effort to renovate a house if you've got a very large mortgage to service at the same time. And so sometimes you've got to have a bit of a radical rethink on how you go about that. And that's what this is about. There's so many things changing. I don't believe the incremental approach is sufficient. I think we need to step back and have some pretty serious rethinks on how we do things. Regarding the circular diagram, that's the stakeholder analysis. That is a snapshot at a point in time of the people who we perceived we'd need to engage with or possibly just inform. It is a moving target. It will grow. However, I do have to say it's unlikely we will engage with absolutely everybody possible. There's just so many people that we could possibly talk to. It's somewhat unrealistic that we'd have. So we need to select a list, basically.
Sure.
And regarding the program itself and the ways in which it's delivered, yeah, there will be financial measures of success, and there are also time ones. All that's been presented here today is that the transformation comes in 3 large phases, but within each phase there is a schedule and there are milestones and deliverables. And what we'll do is a technique called time boxing, where we pick a number of those initiatives and we set a schedule for those and we progress those. And at the end of that, we see if we're happy or unhappy with how we've progressed. And then that stage gate, if you will, can be used to then redirect the program. And so you actually get many bites of the cherry, as they say, throughout the life of the program. So you'll see phase 2, we have a pretty long list of things we want to do. Some of them are establishing us to get ready to change. And there are some initiatives in there where we act on some of our areas of improvement. And then there's a stage gate. And then we go on to phase 3. And you'll see when we do phase 3, we will group those initiatives over the, let's say, 12, 18 months, however long it happens to be. And then that will be tracked and monitored against time and money. So you should be satisfied.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we do, things come across the table here, and I think we talk about must-haves, nice-to-haves, things we aspire to. I actually see this as a must-have, because I believe as our role in society has changed, we tend to wrestle with the complexities of being a service provider or being a compliance organisation, and we actually need, all of us, EMs included, a change of culture and a focus on facilitating for our community. We've got a very ambitious economic development policy that we've worked on, and I fully support this program as another step in that very positive direction.
Yeah, it's a difficult conflict of delivery, service deliverer and regulator, particularly when it comes to regulations on behalf of the government, as opposed to, there's other regulations which are very important around making sure buildings are safe, for that neighbours aren't carrying out activities they shouldn't be, that disrupting the whole neighbourhood. So yeah, it continues to be that difficult balance we have to walk, but we need to walk it as best we can on behalf of ratepayers. Councillor Turnbull.
Just want to majorly agree with Councillor Thompson. This is a must do. It's been a long time since we've had a full transformational look at what council is and how it delivers what it does. Councils aren't the same as what they once were, and if we move any further into the future of local government space, it's going to continue to change. We're doing a huge amount of things, but I think sometimes we lack the strategy in behind to actually be really clear about what we're trying to achieve and what things we spend our time on. And so I think we scramble often and we're reactive often, and it's time we sort of went, right, we're either going to deal with that problem that's in front of us, or we're going to be clear that it's not our strategic priority right now. And that's one thing we have not been that great at doing. I think we're often trying to be everything to everyone. And, if we can actually work on a plan now that gets us really clear as to what the role of council is, how we want to do things, so that staff can actually have, when they get direction coming from outside, from councillors, they actually have the ability to manoeuvre and do it. There's so often that we've got lists of tasks and things that are being rolled over. I think we've got a paper coming up shortly about all the different projects and bits and pieces and budgets that we're rolling over. And that's because we're spread too thin. We're trying to do a bit of everything and we're not really clear on what we're trying to achieve at the end of it. So I'm happy to move the recommendation, if that's right.
That would be great. Thank you. You were seconded for that. Councillor Percival, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, I think a lot's been said already, so I'll put it, those in favour say aye, and against, it's carried. In doing that, I want to wish staff all the best. Just recognising that, you know, this can be disruptive and, well, it will be disruptive. It might be, you know, quite concerning for some staff who, you know, you're faced with quite major change about how they do things and what they're doing. But, you know, the passion for staff to actually be a better organisation, I think is really commendable. And, you know, Mr. Palmer, if you can pass on to the staff that elected members really support them and what they're doing and what you're doing with this and what we're doing on behalf of the community, and that's, you know, yeah, we hope it all goes as well as possible for them. But thank you for taking that on and going through that challenge. Okay, moving on to 6.3, Tutu Hill Road Seal Extension. And we've got Mr. Mike Harrison here. So hand over to you, Mr. Harrison, if you want to introduce the report and go through the detail of that.
Good morning, everyone. As the report is, as you've seen in front of you, from the detailed design, we've come up with a financial picture of, and as an estimate at the stage, because we know how volatile tendering is. So that was something materially different to what we talked about previously, which is why we brought that back to you with the recommendation now that it's time to really consider in this situation whether it's something that councillors wish to continue with. I think the report stands for itself with the information. I'm happy to address any questions between myself and Mr. Hope.
Okay, so questions first of all, Councillor Percival.
Yeah, Mike, you've mentioned monitoring of the road, but you haven't stated the number of, on the traffic count, how many cars per day or vehicles movements per day. Also pertinent to that question, what would be the impact if the road was turned into a non-through road?
Through the chair, I can tell you that the traffic counts through there at the moment are sitting about 63 vehicles a day. That does vary a little bit depending on which day in a particular week you run through, but the traffic counts we've done over the last 12 to 18 months fluctuate from that 60 to, that's annual average daily traffic, so it is a calculation. The figures we have vary from 63 to 95-ish. Like I say, that varies a little bit, but one consistent thing is at the busy times of the day, one is between 8:30 or around 8:30 in the morning, and the other one's about 4:30 in the afternoon. And at that time, we have 8 vehicles a day, 8 vehicles per hour that are travelling on the road. As an example of how that sits nationally, the investment on roading projects is normally worked on a benefit cost of 4 to 1, or maybe more recently it's around being pushed up with shorter funding to 6 to 1. With 250 vehicles a day, that normally gives you a 1-to-1 benefit. So that's cost versus a benefit to cost ratio. So when we're talking around 63 or even under 100, it's something that it's a community driven outcome rather than a financially beneficial to the community. So the impact on the community is going to be more around the social side of things rather than economic, and that would be more of a political decision on that.
Councillor Williams.
Thanks for that. you talk about in here that the design allows for pedestrian allowance, property entrances, a road width that's, everything is at the top notch sort of level. And I know it goes further in the, on the report and it talks why it's got to be at that level, but I actually just can't quite understand how we can't look at it in a way that there's at the moment, there's a gravel road there. For many, many years, people have been wanting to get this changed. Why can't we just give them a country tar sealed road as opposed to a high end pedestrian filled, road over Tutu Hill? I mean, surely a country road would suffice.
Through the chair, it does talk about the space for pedestrians. It's not building a pedestrian facility in there. It's just we're future proofed to say make sure that we did have the space for that future development which would come through it. And perhaps it's not quite as worded as well in the report as what it could be, but the width of the road is the width of the road that we would need to have for two alternating traffic under a sealed situation and the speed that comes from that. One thing we have found is we've done some relatively low cost seal pavements. There's a few of those, we call them Otter Seals or EcoStar, which is basically just dressing up and sealing a gravel road. The long-term cost of doing it that way is far more significant than the almost double the cost of actually doing it properly the first time, if you will.
Councillor Thompson, then Councillor
I'd also be interested to hear the answer to Councillor Percival's question on the merits of making it a non-through road.
I'm just wondering if that's a bus backing up. The merits, we're faced with a fiscally constrained roading future, and we need to keep on managing that. So every time we develop a road, we need to look at the long-term benefits on it. If we're creating these roads, this road as an alternative route to other routes, are we better to improve the quality of this road, or are we better to look at improving the quality of other alternatives? Can we continue to maintain it for an average annual 65 vehicles a day? Would we actually achieve our outcomes by closing it, or not closing it, but making it so it's constrained effectively to cul-de-sacs? Very appropriate question. The network connection wouldn't stop if we didn't have that as a through road. There is other ways to get round, and for that number of traffic, yes, it would be a small number of traffic that would travel a slightly longer distance. If we can improve those other roads, it might not be that much of a difference. You're not talking that great a change. Does that answer the question?
You perhaps didn't go into the politics of closing it off, which I think that obviously the community would have something to say, particularly those who currently use it. And, yeah, but anyway, Councillor Percival, were you wanting something up? That was it. Okay, Councillor Tavendale and then Hopkins.
I'm just wondering if you can give us an indication of how much we could do under the existing budget if we chose to undertake some works.
With the existing budget, we could do a little bit over half, 65%, I would guess. The issue with if we're doing it on that basis, it would actually be, depending on which side, which end you start from, would be having to stop around about the bridge or in those corners here, and that would be the most dangerous space to actually do that, because you're actually increasing the speed values of the vehicles coming through, their expectations getting higher, and that would be just, tis the most dangerous spot for being able to react, because there's nothing, the bridge is a corner. It's not the place where I would recommend that we were making a transition. It's not to say that you couldn't go to the western end of it, because it's a piece with a number of developed properties, residential properties here. We just need to look at, if you're going to do just a small section there, even a couple of 100 metres, whether that would actually create an issue, because it's going down the hill. So we'd have to look at how the speeds are actually developing out of that. It creates risks, but we could actually shorten it to those areas.
probably supplementary to that, if you took out some of the extra bits and pieces, you know, you took the road width as it is, recognising that, you know, and I guess this is where Councillor Williams is coming from. We have narrow sealed roads and people deal with them usually reasonably okay. We have the right speed limit on it, which doesn't obviously stop people going faster, but it at least controls a lot of the behaviour. And we looked at, you know, sealing pretty much what's there. There may be, you know, from what I've seen of it, I think the Essex Street end is quite straightforward. It's really once you get to the bridge and up the hill where it gets to the corrugations quite regularly. And just understanding, you know, if you know what needs to be done actually to get the whole length sealed, but without actually worrying too much about the widening and so forth at this stage. Mr. Hope.
Yeah, I'll have a crack at this one because I think Mike's already answered it. Look, to be frank, the roading team were quite keen to support this project and for it to carry forward. It was really more a discussion between Mr. Rendell and myself about, from a wider council perspective, is this the best use of council resources, including funds availability and, you know, contractor availability over the next 12 months. And we just didn't think it was a particularly compelling case. You know, you could change the recommendation, you know, that we delay it for 12 months until hopefully maybe the contracting market is better, but the team is going to be incredibly busy over the next 9 months. You know, this was almost written and contemplated before we had the matters up in Hariri to deal with, which is a significant amount of extra work that will chew up contractor resource and just make it unavailable. It's like, so, you know, I think we just need to, I suppose we were trying to be a bit braver about being realistic about what can be delivered and for what cost. You could look at alternatives later on, but at the moment, I think this is just it's not providing a good level of return for the amount of time and money that we are investing into it. We can go away and look at alternatives, but, you know, and again, I think if we're going to do some of these things, we should do them to a, you know, an appropriate standard the first time, because that is a better long-term cost-effective approach. So, you know, that essentially that's why we came to the recommendation rather than carry on and find the money. It's like, this is just not this project and not now. Can come back to it later, but it really is about, you know, what is the best use of the available resources we've got over the next 12 months. And sorry, this is quite far down the priorities given everything else. You know, we can look at the carry forward report. There's a bunch of roading projects in there that we just didn't get good responses from the market about. We really, you know, they are a higher priority, and that's really where I'd like to see the time and resource going into. So, sorry, that's just to put this recommendation at a bit of a wider perspective.
Yeah, look, you know, I don't think any of us should have any problem with the recommendation from officers. You know, you do have to look at those aspects that you've detailed there, and I think you've done that correctly, and you've come up with the right recommendation from that perspective. I think from us, you know, we've responded to ongoing call from the community to do something about this road. And, you know, we're trying to figure out, is there some way of doing something, and recognising that, you know, there is a need. There's more and more houses are on that road. Obviously, it was a gravel road when they decided to build, but the cumulative effect is just getting past what was probably envisaged, you know, 20 years ago and beyond. So yeah, I hope staff aren't taking it as a criticism at all. But yeah, thank you for the explanation from yourself, Mr. Hope. Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Look, what I've heard this morning, I take Paul's point. It might have been more appropriate if we've been given some options rather than simply the one that's in front of us, because there is an issue of credibility and faith and responsiveness to the community that we as politicians probably are more aware of and more entitled to take into account. I'm surprised to hear about alternative seal uses that have generated more long-term costs. These are things I'd like to have more information about. That's not what I've heard from other roading officers and also at roading conferences that I've attended. And I don't know which areas we've done the Otter seal or the Orca seal and where the long-term costs are, because long-term to my mind is 20 or 30 years. And I'm not aware that we've done any of that in the last 20 or 30 years, but let's find out. Let's also look at the carry forwards. I would like to be looking at this proposal in relation to those. There's $850,000 worth of minor safety improvements and road to zero funding. I'm not even aware that we've signed off on it. I couldn't tell anyone who asked me what that money's to be spent on. Now I know what the Tutu Hill money is to be spent on. I don't know what the other things are. If we stack them up against each other and look at them as priorities, where would they rank? The other question I would have, or the other suggestion I would have, is if you go back to the key issue, the core issue, the fundamental thing that people came to us, it wasn't about having a thoroughfare, it wasn't about having seal, it was about getting rid of dust. And there are other places and other people. Councillor Kingan and the Mayor and I had a meeting with another group of residents confronting exactly the same issue. So even if we didn't seal Tutu Hill Road, if we could give people a credible, effective and cost efficient way of eliminating dust, not only on one road, but on a number, we would be making a big step forward and improving the well-being and health of the community more generally. So as of the moment, I'm not sure where I'm going to sit on this or vote, but I would like us to look at this recommendation alongside the road and carry forwards later in the morning.
Yeah, I don't think there was a question either. Councillor King, you got a question or?
Not really. Could I move that? I think I'd like to see us have an amendment or something on the table so that we approve an extension of time for this project or something like that.
Yeah, I think if you're happy to move that we add this to carry forward projects for further work to be done on it.
Yeah.
Would allow at least for it to stay there and to be looked at as to what can be done. That'd be okay.
Yeah, certainly. I'd like to speak to it, but
Councillor.
If I can just clarify, are you talking the original budget or the increase in budget?
I think given time, we might perhaps look at some options if that's possible. I mean, I quite like Councillor Millmine's idea of a lesser road. I live on a narrow road, and it certainly slows the traffic.
We've got for carry forward, it's the budget that we've got, the money that's been collected for that. So it would be that whether the next council decides, well, actually we will put more money into it or not. That's the next part. Mr. Harrison.
If I could just qualify, because the comments that Councillor Kingham said about the road outside his place going through there, and that is not a highway as such, but it's still at a practical side for two vehicles going past. And what is designed for Tutu Hill Road is not substantially different to that. We do know that as it gets developed through there with other housing and residential developments, if it gets to that stage, the width of the road that we're actually planning at this stage won't be wide enough. There will be a time in the future when there's a greater demand for extra parking, extra things going right through there. So the demand will keep on going. From a staff point of view, we would not recommend that we compromise on the width of what's there because it is not substantially different to what's there at the moment. What we'd be talking about is the point where we cut it off so that we can actually progressively build the road in a safe and sustainable way.
Sorry, and I know there's a motion on the table. I'm just trying to understand it totally.
Yeah.
So get the carry forward so that it'll be the same amount that it is currently sitting in the budget. I just want to make sure that there is some kind of red flag that means that when that gets looked at, we are back to discussing whether or not the whole project is a viable option, because I still think there's merit in that.
Yeah, well, that was the idea of sort of having further work on it. So it gives option, we can look at what can be done with that money, what's needed to actually do the whole project as proposed. So you'll second that. Councillor Wolstein.
Thanks, Mayor Kirchin. I was going to go along the same lines, but I just wanted to, without being a grump, just say that I'm reading the report. I was really disappointed that the budget of 376 was based on base average value for a straight and flat road alignment. Well, we all know that Two Hill Road is not a straight and flat road alignment. So I just think that I know it was said it was done in a hurry, but it's raised community expectations, and it's put councillors, the elected members, in a spot in terms of those expectations now are going to be, well, if this motion was passed, but it's not going to be now, hopefully, thankfully, but it's raised expectations. And I think we've put a lot of time and effort into this matter when really, if we'd been told right at the start that it was going to cost about 50% more because it's not a straight and flat road, we may well have not been in this situation. So just to say, I hope that doesn't happen again, Mike. I'm not blaming you personally in the slightest, but just saying it was in my mind, a very lazy estimate that was given to council, and I'd be supportive of what Councillor Kingham is moving.
Sorry, do need to recall this came through a submission to the annual plan. There is very limited time to respond to submissions, so that was the best information at the time. This was not a officer developed project, so that it was like it was a submission. This was a response for the submission, and that's why it was to be frank, a quick and dirty estimate because of the limited time available to give councillors something to debate. Oh yeah.
Okay, and just mindful of time, is anyone wanting to speak against the motion?
Mayor, I'd like to move a second motion if I may.
An amendment?
No, a second motion in addition to the one that's on the table now.
Well, we'll deal with this one first. Councillor Harlow-Daly.
I just wanted to support the actual initial recommendation because I think you've done a good job in terms of assessing all the risk and the priority, and that's part of the issue that we experience as elected members. Is sometimes we're quite reactive to the community views, but in our stewardship role, with the resources that we have, the time, the expense, and you've really clearly outlined it, I think that's a sensible way to go. But I understand the community have advocated for this, but it just puts us in a difficult situation. But the original recommendation I was quite supportive of because that's where we sit right now. We've got a stack of other priorities that we really need to move on with. So that's just where I stand.
Thank you.
For myself, the driver is very much around the dust and health and safety side of things. I totally support everything staff have put in this report. They're dead right, and I think that is where the councillor hat goes on, which for me is around. I get that we've got a lot of roads around the community that have a dust issue and things, but this is probably a really unique one. The fact that it's found itself right smack bang in the middle of our community now. We've built all around it, and so for me that's changed the way it's used in so many ways, and also that kind of cornering on the hill and things and slide. It's a dangerous little spot. We're right in the middle of our of Western and Waimaru. So for me, it sits differently. It's not a new thing that's just come out of the submission this year. It's been quite clearly through the submissions for the 9 years I've been on council, and probably before that from my understanding of Bob Gaz's interactions with councillors and council over the years. So this is nothing new, and so for me it was really exciting to see it on the timetable finally. It's taken a lot to get it there. There's never a good time to find a big pocket of money and say we're going to make this happen. So that's why I think for me it's important we hold on to what we've got so far and don't lose it, because it is bigger than just how many cars go down this road right now, and I have no doubt that will continue to increase. So for me, with the dust issue and with the corners and things and the placement, this does become quite a different road, and that's why
in my view, it changes the priority of it.
Okay, I'm going to put it, those in favour say aye. Those against? That's carried. I'm going to have a break now for morning tea. We're slightly late for that, but we'll be back at 10:50. 10:40. Do my maths right. Okay, thank you.
It says 10:32.
Right, welcome back. Get things underway again. So,
May I, sorry, I did ask,
Hopkins.
well, I asked if I could move a second recommendation resolution.
Yes, you did.
In the interest of time, I won't do that because it would be just quicker if I could simply say that I think I would like us as council or one of the committees to request that officers advise us on preferred dust suppression measures and the adoption of the possible adoption of a dust suppression policy. So I'll just leave that on the table. If other people think it's a silly idea, it can die the death now. But if it isn't, then let's have it at some point.
Yeah, I think it's another whole piece of work that probably isn't best dealt through this particular report. So I think we'll let's raise that at a council briefing and go from there. Okay. Anyway, we'll now move on to item 6.4, the review of the procurement policy. So welcome to Amelia Lyons, our risk and procurement advisor. So you've been on board a little bit now, but we haven't had a chance to really have a proper meeting and discussion. So welcome you here. You've written this report, but we'll hand over to Mr. Hope to introduce it to start off with and to go from there.
Yes, so it will be a brief introduction, as you noted. So Lyons joined council relatively recently. It took a wee while to between appointment and arrival in New Zealand, but it's from my perspective certainly well worth the wait, and I think this report is a demonstration of that. I think it is very useful to now have a procurement advisor that has a whole of council perspective, whereas previously the procurement specialists were very much situated inside an activity and had very much an activity sort of focus rather than a whole of council focus. Really just I think there's a couple of key findings and key recommendations, but I'll just turn it over to Mrs. Lyons to give a bit more of an introduction and then open it up to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So there are several elements to the report. So first I'll talk about the policy itself. That was reviewed. So I reviewed the actual policy wording, did a gap analysis against the New Zealand procurement rules and the OAG's procurement guidelines, and also spoke to key users of the policy from various areas of council. From that, there were a few recommendations on updating the policy and how it could be made simpler to use and easier to use. So those have been made. We've stripped out some of the lower level procedural detail, and that will be included in procedure documentation. The overarching principles of the policy, so the limits on when to use the quotation procedure and the tender procedure, they've stayed the same, but we have built below that requirements for approval in different stages of the procurement process. In addition to that, we've included some details on when to use when we can use all of government contracts or the limits essentially of what would need approval there, how to go about requesting an exemption formally and who can approve those, and also included additional detail on establishing supplier panels and moving forward with a slicker approach to procurement in that regard. For the action plan that's listed, there are a fair few things that we need to do. So that includes making sure that all our procedural documentation is available for staff to use, and they'll essentially be able to pick that up and go forward with procurement in alignment with the policy, and hopefully need very little support there. That also includes the requirement for additional templates, so procurement plans, business cases, and various other documentation and tools to support a consistent approach across council. Included in that action plan is a requirement for some workshops and training, so those will be rolled out by the end of October. And the third main element of the report is the implementation of purchase cards. So currently council only has one credit card, which can be requested to be used, excuse me. And what we are proposing is that there are departmental purchase cards implemented. These will be for very low value, low risk purchases, and essentially they will take out the strain of disproportionate admin for very low value spending. So, for example, in the property team, they've got maintenance staff who might be out on a job and find that they need to purchase a new tool or equipment. And at the moment, with the P2P system, the admin requires phone calls back to the office for a requisition, which will need approval by a manager who may not be available to approve before you can get a purchase order number, which then would have to be provided to the store where the item was bought. So to avoid that, the purchase cards will provide the ability for people in that situation to go and spend very low amounts. Obviously, there is a risk with providing this ability to more people, but we feel like we'll get some strong controls in there, really efficient ways of making sure that everything's reconciled. And again, the spend limits will be fairly low for those. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. And yeah, for what it's worth, I think it's really good seeing these modifications being brought in. We've trying to bring in a standardized system across the council where you're dealing with lots of different people, not easy, but also just getting rid of some of the bureaucracy out of some of the things and still make sure that the risks are covered. So I think these amendments will be quite helpful in that way. Councillor Tavendale.
Thank you for your report. It's really good to read, the movement we've made in this area. Just talking about the exemptions, you've mentioned that, we've had probably high instances of exemptions of the policy to date. Do you think that the workshop and training will help fix that, or do you think that there needs to be a bit of a shift in attitude, or how do you think we get from A to B there?
So hopefully the additional training and workshops will support that. But I do think there needs to be a shift in mindset. So obviously for a long time, people were very used to approaching procurement in a certain way. And this policy has only been in place for about 8 months, I think. So there will be continued work to change that sort of hearts and minds and make sure that everyone's approach is consistent with the policy. But hopefully the additional documentation will provide people with a way to kind of give them the confidence to make sure that they're doing everything that they should be.
Councillor Hopkins and Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, look, 3 questions. The first one on page 6 of the policy, or page 69 of our agenda, there's a undervalue for money. It reads, bottom paragraph or sentences, where the approach detailed in the policy may not deliver best value for money, an exemption can be approved by an executive team member independent of the procuring department. And I just wondered, I'm a bit uneasy about just having one person do that. And I wondered whether there was merit in having, you know, 2 or 3 or chief executive and I think ET member. I don't know. So I asked a question about that. Equally, just very quickly on page 75 of our agenda, which is page 12 of the policy, there's a reference at the bottom, any procurement for the engagement of professional consultants and independent contractors is valued over $50,000 must follow the tender procedures and have a procurement plan to ensure that council. I can think of a whole raft of instances recently where that has not happened. And I'm wondering if the 50,000 figure is too low. So those are 2 questions. And the
Okay, I'll get
okay.
Mrs. Wise to answer those.
So on the value for money aspect, so it does say an independent executive team member, that would assume that it's already been through the department's executive leadership member as well. So it would require at least sort of 2 sets of eyes. It's just that we wanted to take it away from the department to give someone with some independence a view that says, actually, we agree with that approach. And the second point, so I'll just go back to that page. For the procurement of professional services, that limit is lower than the $100,000 limit for standard tendering. And this hasn't changed, so this remains in the policy from its original version. And this, I believe, is to try and get officers to consider how they go about the engagement of professional services. So rather than approaching it in a way that we previously have before, where we may have just contracted to someone we know can provide a decent service, we actually need to consider how much we'll be spending with that firm, which we've put as a lower amount just to try and get people to work a little bit smarter there.
Very quickly, last question.
Well, yeah, I would have thought that means that at least 2 contracts that we've done recently on quite major matters would have had to be tendered and they weren't. So the issue remains. Credit, I presume are these procurement cards, are they going to be debit cards or credit cards? How many and what safeguards and scrutiny will they be subject to if we agree to this? Because there's a big risk here.
Mr. Hope.
They're a prepaid credit card.
Right.
So somewhere between the 2. I think probably the biggest endorsement of them is, as noted, Audit New Zealand is quite supportive of the use of purchase cards. We're probably one of the last councils in the country not to have these, so we will have very strong procedures in place. You know, probably the most important is that, you know, there's absolutely no facility to have cash withdrawals on this kind of card, which is something that you'd be surprised how many people with credit cards get tripped up. You know, it's very much an itemised statement. You know, the person is responsible. They'll need to supply all of the supporting information, otherwise they essentially lose the privilege. So it's a replacement of petty cash, effectively, but a lot safer, a lot more robust, and a lot cleaner administratively.
Thank you. Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kircher. Just a comment first and then a question. Yeah, on the purchase cards, Amelia, I agree entirely. It makes perfect sense. And as Mr. Hope has just mentioned, the Office of the Auditor General supports the use of purchase cards and sets at the bottom of page 60 and top of page 61 the criteria on which they are they can be managed. So I think it's makes perfect sense. But my question is, on the bottom of page 61, under strategy enhancement, the very last paragraph says a key element of a successful procurement strategy is a strong relationship in contract management. Can you perhaps just clarify that for me? How that's going to be developed with purchasing?
Absolutely. So at the moment, we've not really got anything defined about how we manage contracts once they're in place. So this policy will obviously get us to a place where we're comfortable with who we engage and who we have these contracts and relationships with. But there is a gap at the moment. There are no defined relationship managers for large contracts. So within teams, you will have main points of contact, but that's not actually defined in any way, and there are no requirements around that. Nothing set in stone that says we will review contractor performance in this way and how often we would do that based on what the contract is. So we want to build upon that and get to a place where actually we are monitoring what we get from our suppliers.
Councillor Haller, oh, sorry, did you have one more? Councillor Wallstein?
Just a response. Thank you. Thank you. And just to say that I do notice an area noted as requiring further improvement and will be reviewed in the coming months. So it's a work in progress. So thank you for your explanation.
Councillor Haller-Lely?
Yes, no, just supportive of the development of the relationship manager role, because it's very important. It's quite standard, you know, in terms of managing contracts. So that's quite important.
Okay. So we've got the recommendations in front of us. Councillor Wallstein, are you happy to move those? Thank you. And seconded, Councillor Hopkins. I think it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, I think this is a good step forward of refinement, and but not the last one, obviously. So I'm going to put it. Those in favour, say aye. Against, that's carried. Thank you, Amelia, for your work on this, and it's great to have you on board. Okay, councillors, we'll move to the last report. We were scheduled to finish at 11. We will be slightly later, but let's see how we go on this one. So page 88, carry forward report, and hand over to Mr. Hope.
In its simplest form, this report is really just confirming officers the authority to continue to act and to spend in relation to these projects. So at that very basic level, I think it's hopefully simple to say yes, because all of these projects are already been subject to a decision by council, either through an annual plan process or a standalone process. The list is a bit longer than last year or previous years, in particular because of probably the lack of resources, sometimes materials, other times contractors. So that's probably a new explanation that we've added in. Yeah, given the time, probably just answer questions. I think going forward, we'd probably like to reformat this report and perhaps get some wider delegations. So, you know, some of the standing items that carry on from year to year, just get those as an automatic sign off. But that's a bit more work than we've got time for today. So just happy to answer questions. Yes, that's all.
Thank you. Right, questions? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I'm wondering, I'm looking at page 90, start with, and the training budgets that we're talking about there. There's a variety of them, in fact. Or is it the previous page? No, hang on, I think it's that page. Anyway, there's, I tally up $68,000 or $67,944 in training that we want to carry forward. And we haven't said what it is or why it is. And I do think that we're entitled to actually know what we're spending training on and whether we still necessarily want to spend all that money on that. Some of the other questions I have, I mean, on the next page, 91, the Cape Wombrau to Bushy Beach track, we've got 160,000 as an internal loan, and we're saying it's on hold pending landowner negotiations. I mean, I'm suggesting that some of these, and there's a couple of others later on, I'm just suggesting that we take them out because as of the moment, they're not going anywhere, and we don't have the kind of fundamental approvals that we need. And finally, if you look at page 92, there's 150,000 in road safety issues under roading, fatigue, intersections, young drivers, impaired drivers, minor safety matters general. And then minor safety road to zero, 78,000, and minor safety capital general, 621. And I don't even know what they are. And it would be nice, I think, if we had a bit more information about those before we necessarily decided to spend money on them rather than other roading issues, like the one we debated earlier today.
Okay, so if you respond to the training one and then some of those roading ones.
By far the largest training amount is in relation to the building control area, which I think has been discussed here a couple of times. In particular, the cost of keeping staff qualified and moving them through essentially the courses they are required to maintain our accreditation as a building control authority. So, yeah, training is one of the things that has been most disrupted over the last 12 months, availability of staff and the number of courses that were cancelled because it wasn't felt they could be delivered online in an appropriate manner. So, some of these things have to be delivered in person and there just wasn't the facility to do that. So that's really the main reason why there's so much carried forward training budgets. It's just some of the courses that are fundamental to people's roles have just not been available. In relation to the roading, yes, we could come back with some further details, but this is the end of the 3-year roading cycle with the Waitaki. So, they are approved projects, just haven't been able to be delivered. So, the minor safety projects, there's very strict criteria about what they can be spent on. We could provide further detail, but that funding is not available to be diverted into other areas. It needs to be spent on minor safety projects. If you require further detail of that, then we can provide that in an update at a later date.
A very quick supplementary question. Presumably we're paying some of the money on those. If we decided that we would take our sum and reallocate it, we could do that, I presume. We would forfeit the Waitaki subsidy. My question is whether we are happy to have these things funded with our money and theirs rather than other projects. That's why I suggested we get a bit more information about them. That's all.
As I said, we can provide further information, but the minor safety projects, most of those are intersection improvements because they have been identified as high risk. Intersections are essentially some of the high risk parts of the roading network. So improvement on those is, essentially good value for money in terms of community wellbeing.
Some of the challenges too, if we're actually, some of these things may not be things that we actually think highly of or are priorities, but some of them are NZTA's priorities through the government's, the GPS for land transport. And I've talked to Mr. Harrison about this, if we're not doing those things and we're not supporting those things, then they look a bit negatively on us for other things. It's a difficult situation, and the thing I don't have an understanding of is how much flexibility within those things as to where the money gets directed. But I think that's a discussion for another time, but something that would be good to get a better understanding of, and understanding the relationship between Waitaki, the Regional Transport Committee, and our roading team would be advantageous, I think. Councillor Wallstein.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kircher. Yeah, just on page 90, I know there's 3 different headings for transformation. I asked a question of Alex earlier in the morning regarding budget, and there's 3 budgets there, which total 465,000. So that's a fair bit of money which has been earmarked, if you like, for transformation projects. So for that investment, I note that Alex responds to the question I asked earlier. But just my question really is on page 91 under Parks and Recreation. There's 3 different headings where it mentions coastal erosion mitigation, and I know under Corridale and under coastal erosion in general, and also under Waitaki Parks and Reserves. Is there I just want to make sure that there is a coordination between those 3 different areas to make sure that the expenditure is actually maximised, if you like, rather than being fragmented to achieve the best result for the 3 different areas of expenditure?
Mr. Hope.
Yeah, there certainly is. These relate to very high risk sites that have been identified, and sort of immediate action needs to be taken in relation to all of them.
Okay, so I'd like to move the recommendations. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Councillor Holding, thank you very much. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll put it, those in favour say aye. Against, carried. And that ends our council meeting for today. So we've got a power meeting this afternoon. Time's at 12:45 starting for that, so there'll be another live stream for that one. But thank you very much everyone who has joined us on the live stream, and declare the meeting closed.